Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I am thrilled you're here. And today I've got a real treat because I'm interviewing a gentleman that I'm friends with and know quite well. His name is Steeve Breton, and he's the founder of Velocity Capital, focuses on large multifamily syndications, and he's a partner in over 1,700 units, valued over $130 million. But what's exciting about this for me is Steve's been in my coaching program for some time now, and I've been blessed to see his phenomenal growth. And I mean, now he's even a panelist at my live event boot camps. In fact, we'll have one coming up in Atlanta on November 2nd through the 4th, and Steve will be there. He's also a member of my multifamily boardroom mastermind. But you know what I love about Steve is that he's just a real giving soul, and he loves to help other people, and he's an all-around great guy. Steve, I'm really glad you're here, my friend.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start, as I usually do, by having you tell my listeners, how you got started in real estate. I know that's not that wasn't your core business. Talk about how the transition and really what that has looked like.
Sure. Yeah, I followed a traditional career path, went to college, studied information technology, put my ladder up against that corporate wall and started climbing the ladder as quickly as I could. Did very well. And in 2008, with the financial crash, I saw all of my life savings get a serious hit. That started to clue me in as to maybe this isn't the best way to save and to prepare for my retirement sometime in the future. And so I started looking at real estate and other ways to invest. And that's when I got the bug.
Nice. Did you start in single family or did you go right into multi? I don't recall.
I actually started with, my first one was a triplex. Mm-hmm. And then I just continued down that path. It was pretty comfortable. Another duplex, a triplex, and ended up getting a sixplex. At some point I was at 16 units and realized it's probably not scalable like I thought it might be. And it was also becoming a part-time job, and I already had a full-time career, so it was difficult to balance all that. So I started getting into limited partnerships, so basically more passive investing with people that were taking down much larger properties in other parts of the country.
Right. You started, and a lot of people start that way. They start investing passively, which is a fantastic way to start because, and we've talked about this on the show before, and then they ultimately become active like you did. And, what's great about starting that way is, first of all, you get some experience, depending upon who you align with, the operator that you align with, but it also goes on your resume and it makes it so that, it's much easier for you to get debt. You're going to get a better interest rate. They classify it as experience, and it's just a natural transition. So great way to get started. So, starting out, talk about any aha moments that you had. I mean, you just mentioned one. You were at 16 units. You realized it was a part-time job, and you realized that the larger units made more sense. What else? Talk about maybe some other aha moments in your career.
I think the biggest aha was at the end of one of those limited partnerships that I was involved with. So I was a passive investor. I had put money into the deal, and I think we were about 3 years in, and they cashed out, and I got a pretty sizable check, and I was like, wow, this is really profitable, and I didn't have to deal with tenants and toilets and all of the management aspects. And so I thought that was great, but then I started wondering, if I'm making this much money on this deal, what is the sponsor making?
Right.
And fortunately, I was connected with a few sponsors, and two of them were really good at sharing, their experiences, what was going on with the deal, how they structured it, and I started to get a good look behind the scenes and realized that this is not only something that could help me with my retirement, but it could actually be my second career.
Right.
There's a lot more to it, and that's when I really got the bug for larger multifamily.
Right, and I mean, you're already with this incredible portfolio, and what is it? Over 1,700 units you're involved in, and you still have your core career, right? I mean, you're still doing that, so you're able to do that on the side, which is just incredible. And hopefully, guys, those of you listening, I get asked so often, should I quit my job? And you just don't have to. That's what's so great about, this larger multifamily is you're able to do it. what's your goal? At what point do you anticipate, leaving the corporate environment?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, part of that is,
Or do you? And,
well,
and
I certainly do at some point.
okay.
But
Okay.
for me, it's a matter of finding balance again. I want to go fast in real estate. I know I can. I know I would be very successful quickly, but at the same time, I have family. I've got my first son just went to college. I've got two more behind him, so I want to make sure I have balance in my life and spend enough time with the kids and have the traditional income to put them through school. So just trying to find that right balance there. So it's probably going to be a couple more years anyway.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I'm also right now focused on capital raising, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not actually making those trips out to the markets and understanding, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, building the relationships with the brokers, right? I rely on my team to do that. If that continues to go well, I'm not sure I would ever need to really leave the corporate job.
Sure, sure.
Right?
So you're aligning with other operators to do these deals as well, and raising the money and bringing the money to the deals. And by the way, guys, that's a great business model as well. Then you're able to do it like Steve's doing it, where full-time job, family, kids in college, and still creating an incredible portfolio. The way you're doing it. So let me ask you this, Steve. What kind of person do you think is best suited for this business? Do you think there's a type?
I don't know that there's a type. I think if you understand yourself, if you're self-aware and you know what your strengths are, then you can apply those strengths to a team, regardless of what that team looks like. You would pull together the right people around you to make up for your weaknesses. Rather than focusing on your weaknesses, you focus on your own strengths and the people that'll fill those weaknesses for you.
Fantastic. That's guys. That's the way to do this. Is to either hire, partner, or align with people that shore up your weaknesses so that you focus on your strengths. And that's fantastic. And you're a testament to the power of that. What do you think is the most challenging part of what you're doing right now?
From a raising capital perspective, well, it's really two parts of the business. So one of them is finding quality operators, people with proven track record, with high integrity, with an abundance mindset. That's not always easy to find, although having joined your mastermind, that's really been a great source for me.
Sure.
So that's half the business, and that alone, it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of getting to know people, traveling to different conferences or masterminds, and really digging in. And then the other side of it is obviously from raising capital perspective, it's getting to know your potential investors, building those relationships, building that trust with them, and that requires a lot of education.
Sure it does. And you educating them and
Correct.
It's been said that managing your investors can be more intensive than actually managing the property. And I totally believe that. So what's your favorite part of what you do? What do you enjoy the most?
I pretty much enjoy that education piece, the aha I see in people's eyes when I tell them about how these deals are structured, how they can work, how much value they can add to their own portfolio.
Right.
And I'm coming from a place where that was my experience, right? Corporate guy, saving, got the 401k, doing all the quote right things, and at some point saying, I think there's something more to this. There's a better way to diversify my portfolio, not just with stocks and bonds.
Right.
So when I share that story with people and see their eyes light up and they're like, okay, and then they get their first distribution from one of our deals together.
Right.
That to me is really the payback.
Sure. Or you inspire them to do it themselves as well. I mean, you inspire them to invest actively as well. And I know you do that because I've seen you do it, and that's fantastic. So speaking to somebody that's where you were, corporate job, know they want more, know they deserve more, know they want more for themselves and their family. What advice would you give them to how to get started?
I think mainly I would say to not use your corporate job as a crutch, right? Not to use your situation, whatever it is. There are people that are in far worse situations who do far more than I do.
Right.
So realizing that, so understanding your circumstance and then figuring out how do you make that work? How do you apply your strengths? I mentioned this earlier. You could use whatever you want as a crutch. Once you decide and you actually make that decision to move forward, set your path and go take action, everything starts to fall into place. But if you sit there and think about all the reasons why you can't do something, it's never going to happen.
And you know what? And I talk about this in my live events. People have a story. So you're calling it a crutch. It's the same thing. It's a story, the story they tell themselves, which is a circuit breaker. Oh, I've got this. Oh, I can't do that. And it's so they don't feel terrible about themselves. And they use that story or that crutch, as it were, as a circuit breaker. So they don't get disgusted with themselves. But I'm here to tell you guys, disgust is a very powerful motivator. And if that's where you have to go to take action, then do it. And I'm going to tell you that, and you've heard me say it before, the life you want will require you to get uncomfortable. And so you've got to push past those stories and push through those stories. So what would you say is the best advice you've ever received, Steve?
A couple of things, actually.
Okay, no, great. I want to hear them.
Short things, but one of them was only do fat deals. And, that was early on. I was trying to figure out, what deal am I going to do? Or how do I get a deal done, right? I want to just get into this business. So I was taking the action, talking to brokers, talking to sponsors. And, I was on the fence on a couple of different deals. So I went and spoke to the sponsors that I had already invested in over the past several years. And, they just kind of laughed at the deals I was looking at. They said, that's not good enough. You should only be doing fat deals. And there are enough of them out there where everyone can win without taking, excessive risk. So I've kind of followed that advice and took my time and did find 3 really good deals to act as a general partner in.
Yeah, fantastic. And they are out there. I mean, they require a lot more hunting, but they're out there. And with a lot of people doing skinny deals right now. And, I hate to say it, but there could be a reckoning at some point here with that. And I hope not, but it's very possible. So if you went back to when you first started thinking about real estate and doing real estate, is there anything you might have done differently to ramp where you are or to enhance where you are?
For sure, I would have started earlier. Mm-hmm. I know that a lot of people on your podcast and interviews are saying the same thing.
Right.
But there's no doubt.
But people need to hear it over and over again, guys. Get started. And that's the whole point here. And that's why I asked the same question, because I want people to hear it. Repetition, is what gets people to take action. So thank you for saying that. You would have started earlier. What else?
I would have started earlier and I would have gone bigger or faster.
Yeah.
When I got into my first deal, I realized, all the stories I told myself about why I can't go big, why I can't invest out of state, whatever it was, who's going to invest millions of dollars with me. All of those things were minor things in the end. I was able to clear those hurdles easily. Right. With the right team, of course. Right.
So do you have like a routine that you contribute some of your success to? Do you have a morning routine? Do you have any habits, success habits that you could share with the listeners?
I do a couple of things. So as far as the morning routine goes, I meditate every morning. Always trying to bring the right things into my life, and that starts with a positive morning routine. And the other thing I do a lot of is again, the networking, right? So I'm having, coffee or lunch with people probably 3 to 4 days a week, several phone calls as well. So during my commute in and out of the city for my job, I'm on the phone with people, whether it's investors or potential partners that are, sponsors in other parts of the country. So always building that network, always talking about real estate, about, what that next deal might look like, and surrounding myself with people that have that right mindset. So
tell my listeners, what are some specific roadblocks or potential, issues to look out for as they start getting into this business?
I'll tell you, not being patient, right? So one of the deals that I was looking at prior to the first deal that I actually did as a general partner, there was one I got very close on. I spent probably 3 weeks with this sponsor, looking over his underwriting, and just the whole time, I just had a gut feeling that he wasn't really somebody of high integrity. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But some of the underwriting wasn't as conservative as I'd like. The way he structured his fees, it wasn't really a win-win for everyone. Seemed maybe he was acting out of scarcity, not out of abundance. It just, again, couldn't quite put my finger on it. I finally did pull the trigger on it. I'm sorry, pull the plug. Decided not to do that deal. But I stuck with it for probably much longer than I should have. But fortunately, I have enough experience as a limited partner in a lot of deals to really see how these things ought to be structured, and the language people use when they're confident, when they know what they're doing. So I did pull the plug on that one. Today, fortunately, I'm much quicker to reevaluate a deal and say whether or not it's for me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that only comes through doing it, through repetition. The more you look at deals, and guys, those of you listening, you've got to be out there looking at deals. You've got to be kicking the tires on deals. You've got to be mixing it up. And that's how you build that competence, which will ultimately equate to the confidence for you to be able to go out and influence people, put deals together, influence brokers and sellers and potential investors. But the one thing you alluded to that I want to kind of put an exclamation mark on is, guys, trust your intuition. Okay, when it doesn't feel right, there are so many subconscious. Your brain is so powerful. Your subconscious brain is so powerful, much more powerful than your conscious brain. And if your gut doesn't feel right, that's your subconscious telling you something's wrong. And it's almost always right. Every time I've ignored it, I've regretted it. And, in partnerships and in relationships, when you ignore that, I promise you, it's to your peril. So, and that's something you should really pay attention to. I know that sounds really esoteric and foofy and whatnot, but I got to tell you, it is very, very important. And I've got, my students get a whole list of questions and things to consider before they get into a partnership with somebody. But one of those pieces is just that. It's your intuition. So,
Rod, actually, I want to add to that.
Sure.
Going back to the morning routine, I also practice gratitude on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Constantly reminding myself of what's great in my life. And I think that also helps with the intuition, because, if I recognize how great things already are, I'm not in such a rush to go do the next thing, right? I can take my time and say to myself, I'm going to raise, one of my goals, raising $10 million by 2020 in the right way at the right time. I always add those things at the end.
Nice. Now, I love that. And guys, you should, as you're making these declarations to yourself, add those things on the tail end, like with gratitude, or while I'm enjoying my life, or, at the end of your declaration, I'm going to make $10 million by X while having fun. So I love that. I'm really glad you shared that. And gratitude's so critical. I mean, before we started recording, I took, my vision boards out of the shot because I didn't want them to clutter the shot, but there's my gratitude board. I mean, this is critical to success. Gratitude is foundational. So awesome. So, tell me about, I don't want people to think it's all roses. Tell me about a time you got your butt kicked. Talk about a setback and the learning experience. I call them seminars. There's always a learning experience. Talk about a time that, it didn't go perfectly, and what happened.
I alluded to I spoke about this deal where I spent too much time with that partner. It was far too much time for me, 3 weeks, when I've got a lot of other things going on, and I was doing a lot of research on them, on their deal, on the market, trying to convince myself to do that deal. So to me, that's probably my biggest one in terms of raising capital. I've had some setbacks in the small multifamily properties, but that's just a different game. It was more around being a landlord, and those things happen.
Okay. So you're a leader. What's a characteristic that you think every leader should possess?
Integrity.
Doing
the right thing, no matter what the circumstance.
No, I love it. I'm glad that came out of your mouth first. That's foundational as well. So
Yeah, in this
what,
business, there's so much that can go wrong, and
right,
especially now, we're toppy, frothy in the market.
sure,
At some point, things are going to go a little bit ugly.
right.
And if you're not convinced that the people you're working with or working for, or if you're the leader yourself, that you all can act with integrity, no matter what the circumstance, no matter what the financial difficulties might be, then you're in trouble.
No question. No question. No, I love it. So what did you have to give up to be where you are right now?
Uh, it's a lot of nights and weekends. So when I get home from my job, I'm fairly tired. I've had a long day. It's all good. I'm adding value at work, and I get lots of reward for that. Sometimes I'm still working when I get home as well, jumping on email, whatever it is. But when I'm not doing that, I'm diving into real estate. I'm updating my website. I'm doing analysis on the next deal, doing underwriting on a deal that I'm about to jump into, or I'm calling investors, whatever it might be. So it's a lot of work. I'm definitely not here to say that it's easy. But if you're willing to put in
But
the
it's
work,
worth
it's
it.
possible. It is
But it's worth
absolutely
it.
worth it. Yeah.
And you associate pleasure with it, correct? You love it.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'll tell you, I've was going to post this on Facebook, but my wife and I just bought this beautiful house on the water just last week. So I'm sitting here in my new office.
Congratulations.
If I
Congratulations.
Thank you. If I pan the camera, it was just all boxes behind me, right? Um, it was not possible for us to do this, let's say, a year ago.
Right.
And just by putting in the effort that I'm putting in this business, the additional income it's bringing in, and my outlook on my ability to continue to bring in that income in the future, everything changes. And now we're sitting in this beautiful house, looking out the windows at the water.
Love it. Love it. So, if you could give one piece of advice to my listeners, the ones that, they know they want to do this, they know they need to do this, what would you tell them?
I would say two things. So first is understanding your reality again. So for me, I live in a part of the country where there aren't a lot of cash flowing deals. So it's more speculation. You'll be buying and hoping for appreciation. I didn't want to get into that business. But in order to invest in other parts of the country, I would have to either travel to meet the brokers, travel to see the properties. I'd be spending so much more time away from home, jeopardizing my job, right, my career. That wasn't really for me. So that my reality was I can't go and do those things. So what can I bring to the table? And what I can bring is my ability to build teams. That's what I do in my corporate job. So I find the absolute best players in a particular market in the asset class that I'm looking for, which is multifamily. And I put together that team, and they do all the work in terms of finding the best deal in the best neighborhoods for that market.
So there's the model, guys. Okay, and this is a team sport. It's not a go it alone sport. And so, and you always want to find the best players. And it took me a while to learn that from an employee standpoint. I actually interviewed a marketing person today, a high level marketing person for one of my companies, and we had this exact same conversation. You find the best people you can possibly find, associate with them, put them on your team, and success is almost guaranteed. So let me ask you this: how about some bad advice? What bad advice have you gotten, in your career in this business?
I don't know if I've had any real bad advice. I think people are quick to give advice. So I've had, when I first wanted to get into real estate, this was a couple of years before I actually really got serious in larger multifamily. I was thinking about it. I wanted to go into that space. And I have a lawyer friend of mine who's a great guy, but his job as a lawyer is to keep people out of trouble. It's sort of risk aversion.
Right.
And he was like, "You've got a great life. Why would you go and do this? It's risky." And all those reasons that I was already telling myself that maybe I shouldn't do this for, he just confirmed them for me.
Reinforce them, right?
Yeah, and then I just didn't do it.
Right.
So it took me a couple of years to come back around.
Guys, be very, very careful who you allow to influence you. Especially pay attention to what their advice is driven from. Is it from their own fear? Is it from their own, lack of of courage to take action in their own lives. I'm really glad
Yeah.
you shared that.
I also get advice around how do you raise capital? How do you sell your deals, or how do you get investors?
Right.
And a lot of that to me is very contrived and salesy, if that's a word.
Sure.
So for me, it's more about just telling the story, right? So telling my story about where I am and how I invested in these things as a passive investor, the results I got from those things. And then if that strikes a chord with the person I'm talking with, which is generally somebody around my age, because that's my network, right? Those are the people I know. So oftentimes they're like, yeah, I feel the same way about the stock market. And yes, I would like to diversify my portfolio, and tell me more about this thing. And it just becomes sort of a natural conversation rather than anything that's contrived. So, another bit of advice is good advice, that is to do things the way you feel like they should be done, right? Trust your gut again about what works for you. Because if you're acting in a way that's not, I guess, in integrity with who you are and how you behave, especially your friends and family, they're going to see that. They're going to sense it right away.
No question. No question. If you're not confident, you're not going to be comfortable, and you're not going to be confident unless you're competent either. So make sure that you don't try to dabble in this thing, because that and be yourself, like you said, and that mindset comes from being comfortable in your own skin, which comes from being confident. So they all tie together. And no, I'm really glad you shared that as well. So do you have any favorite quotes that you read regularly or on your desk like I do?
Probably my favorite one is the secret to living is giving.
Love it. Love it. And you live by that, brother. I got to tell you. And I love where your heart's at. You do everything you can to help other people. And anybody that adds value like you do is destined for success. And that's why you're successful. I mean, it's the bottom line. So in that vein, if you were coaching somebody you really cared about, what would you tell them to focus on their first 90 days or so in this business? They want to get in this business. What would you tell them to focus on?
I think, one of the biggest things is understanding what a good deal looks like. There's so many things to do in the first 90 days. It's like,
yeah, that's not a fair question. That's not a fair question. I apologize. But
no. If they dig in a bit and start to understand what the business looks like, what does a good property look like? What sort of cash flows come from it? What sort of income can a sponsor make from that? Then they can get a better picture of, what is this business? Is it for me? How does it really work? And is it worth working for? Right? Is there going to be enough pleasure in this thing for me to put in all this effort?
Right. Good. Why do you think people fail in this business or give up? Yeah, let's start with fail, but then I want to say, why do you think people give up in this business?
I think it's both of those things, right? So they're unable to see, I think, the big picture, the long-term benefits of all of the work that you have to put in up front.
Right. They just can't see the ultimate goal. They can't envision themselves getting there. Maybe because they're forcing overwhelm on themselves by thinking they have to do it all or know it all before they get started. And really the message there is just get started. Now, I know like I said, I know you're going to be at my Atlanta event. Guys, if you're listening, I hope you can come meet Steve and all the other incredible, very successful people that I'll have on the stage in my panels. Go to multifamilybootcamp.com. There's still some tickets left for the Atlanta event. Last couple of questions. What hurdles did you have to overcome to do this? I mean, I know you're a very hard worker and you come from a place of gratitude and giving, but there's no question you had to overcome some hurdles. Think about what that was.
Yeah, a big one for me was really believing that I could do it, that I can do this and still have, juggling the family life, the work, and then, this hobby of mine of this real estate, or a habit, as my wife sometimes calls
it.
That's
funny.
But, I don't tell a lot of people this, but I was talking about it again.
Well, how about you tell 50,000 people right now?
Yeah, I'll tell everybody right now. My son's going to get a kick out of this one. So talking about it for years, wanted to go big, was still dabbling with my 16 units in my passive investments. And my older son, who is 17, a couple of times asked me, when are you going to go big? When are you going to do this thing that you're talking about? And I just wasn't doing it, and I really had no excuse. So one night at the dinner table, he hadn't asked me in a while, but he just, he asked me, and I, was kind of hemming and hawing again. And he said, when are you going to stop being such a wimp? And he didn't use the word wimp.
Yeah, I got you. No, I know the word he used.
So, and I was like, I was almost shocked. I didn't know if I should get up and give him a punch, or if I should just take a good hard look at myself, which is what I ended up doing. And I ended up thanking him for it, because that at that moment, the next morning, I was out on a bike ride. I blew my friends off and just went for a long bike ride solo, and really thought long and hard about what is it that I want, and what am I going to do about this. And I think within a couple of weeks, we were on the phone talking about your coaching program.
Nice pivotal moment. Well, I one of these, you need to bring him to one of the events here soon, because I'd love to meet him, and I know he'll get value. So please make that happen on me. Okay, bring him on me. But right. That's fantastic. Well, listen, it's been such a treat to work with you, and see this incredible growth, and see how much you care about other people. And guys, I hope you can come see us in Atlanta. You'll be glad you did. And Steve, thank you so much for being on the show, brother. It's been a real treat, and I can't wait to have you back on when you're at 4,500 units.
Thank you very much, Rod. This was fun.
All right, buddy. Take care. See ya.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments. For more resources or to connect with us further, please visit our website at rodkhleif.com. Tune in next week for our next show.